Of all mankind's inventions, none was more consequential than the birth of language. Before its creation, each person's knowledge was limited to what he or she experienced directly. Afterwards, someone who learned something could share it with anybody else. In this video, we'll look at 4 things known about language learning in general, and then listen to the story of Lucky Lucy and Poor Pete to understand the importance of language in everyday life. Our brain's foundation is built through experiences early in life. Pat Levitt, from the Center of the Developing Child at Harvard University, studied our brain development over the course of our life extensively. He showed how the brain's ability to change dramatically drops in the years of life, while the amount of effort such change requires increases. Another research showed that at age 5, 90% of a kid's brain has been formed. If during these years the child is blocked from receiving stimulating experiences, the language center and other parts of the brain are likely to remain weak for life. We learn language socially by observing and imitating others. Some 1,000 years ago, German Emperor Friedrich II wanted to prove the opposite and showed that we develop language naturally all by ourselves. He made his nannies raise some children. They were allowed to feed and clean them, but not to interact socially or ever speak a word. Not one child learned to speak, but instead, they all died. For the same reason, toddlers can't learn language via tape or technology. They need to be motivated through a human relationship. Then they pay attention and learn. Our language brain growth is strongest in year 1. If we study the brain's development by the rate of new synapse formation over the first 11 months of life and then the next 15 years, we can see how much the first 5 years matter. The growth in the part of the brain responsible for language peaks between birth and age 3. During this critical period, children can learn a new word every 90 minutes and several languages simultaneously. Our sensory pathways responsible for vision and hearing peak before, which makes sense because we need to see and hear to imitate language. 4-month-old infants, for example, if raised bilingual by a British mom and a Chinese dad, can already differentiate between 2 languages just by observing the lip movements of their caregivers. Higher cognitive function, such as logical reasoning, peaks only once we have the words and know the symbols to make sense of our world. Language makes our world. Rich language skills allow us to really listen, to speak well, to enjoy reading and master writing. They can create an entire world around us. As the German philosopher Wittgenstein said, "The limit of my language is the limit of my world." Let's take, for example, the word daycare center. Some people think of it as a preschool. The Irish call it play school, and the Germans invented the word kindergarten. Only if we know all 3 words can we understand what's possible. Now, let's listen to the story about Lucky Lucy and Poor Pete, 2 children raised in 2 very different ways. Lucy is raised by her mother. The mother is an average native English speaker who knows around 20,000 different words. Pete's parents hire a nice nanny from a foreign country. Instead of speaking in her native language, the nanny is told to talk to Peter only in English. While her everyday English seems okay, she actually knows only around 5,000 words, 1/4 of what Anne's mom knows. Year 1 is when the language brain is developing the strongest. If Lucy is awake, half of the time her mom speaks, she will hear around 10,000 words per day and maybe 2,500 being directed at her. Directed language is what matters. Whenever her mom connects a word with an actual experience, Lucy learns its meaning. Peter hears English only when the nanny deliberately speaks to him, around 1,000 words a day. But not only is quantity lower, but also the quality. As the nanny is not fluent, there is a chance that many words come across broken. At their first birthday, both kids can say mama and papa. What we don't see is that Lucy actually already knows many, many words, even though she can't say them. But Pete's language universe is more limited. When Lucy and her mom look at picture books, her mom points out what they see. A little monkey is also a gorilla, an ape, a clever animal which uses tools, climbs trees, and lives with his mama and papa in the rainforest of Africa. When Pete looks at a picture book, his learning is limited by the language of the nanny. The same monkey is just cute and eats bananas. To compensate, he's given a language app. But as Pete lacks the foundation, he doesn't understand a word. To him, it's just a bunch of new sounds strangely connected to colorful characters. On their second birthday, Lucy knows already well over 200 words, the amount where children start to learn rules and apply grammar. Pete knows less. Sometimes he gets frustrated because he can't express himself. Lucy likes to go with her mom into the park. Sometimes they watch the old men play chess. She doesn't understand the game, but knows that there are pawns, rooks, knights, a queen and a king, a bishop and a horse. One day, she will learn the rules. It will be easy because she sees each figure clearly. Her understanding of their special skills is obvious. For a lack of language, Pete sees just a big checkered board and some wooden figures which all look quite the same: pawns, knights, bishops. To understand the rules later will be hard for Pete. All figures look so similar. How could they do different things? At their third birthday, both can say their own name and form sentences. Lucy's vocabulary now holds 1,500 words. Pete's got 500 to make sense of this world. In year 4, they enter kindergarten. When Pete stands in front of the big shelf, he sees different wooden blocks, the ball, some old toy, a horse, and the yellow digger. When Lucy stands in front of the same shelf, she sees circles, triangles, squares, a basketball, the red pinwheel, the beige rocking horse, and the carton box of the Lego Technique digger. At playtime, Lucy understands what others are talking about and often takes the lead by suggesting a new idea. Pete often doesn't understand what she means. If the group discusses something for longer, he zones out because he has trouble following the conversation. By the end of the year, Lucy knows 3,500 words, where Pete only knows 1,000 words. Lucy now forms more complicated sentences in perfect grammar. In the evening, her mom reads bedtime stories to her. Words she's missing, she learns out of context. As a native speaker, the mom can raise and lower her voice, making the stories exciting. Fairy tales become alive in her head, and Lucy learns to imagine and to think creatively. Pete still speaks in more simple sentences, and his grammar is not perfect. When his nanny reads to him, the voice is more monotone. It's more boring, and paying attention is more difficult. Words he's missing often remain missing. By the end of the year, Lucy knows 6,000, and Pete knows 2,000 words. To understand why the actual difference in language abilities between the two is even larger than it seems, let's imagine that words are nothing but tools that help us uncode the world, form thoughts, structure ideas, and then communicate with others. With 6,000 words compared to 2,000 words, Lucy's toolbox is now 3 times the size. Lucy has a huge head start as she is entering elementary school. Einstein, by the way, as a child, seldom spoke. One interesting anecdote goes like this. As he was a late talker and hardly spoke at the age of 7, his parents were worried and tried many things to get him to speak. At one point, they were afraid that he had learning disabilities. At last, at the dinner table one night, he broke his silence to say, "The soup is too hot." Greatly relieved, his parents asked why he had never said a word before. The young genius replied, "Because up until now, everything was in order." What are your thoughts about language learning? Can someone like Pete still catch up later in life? Or maybe find other good ways to express himself? Maybe our point of view is too narrow, and Pete and Lucy actually balance each other out with the different skills they have. Please share your thoughts in the comments below.
Millions of students from all around the globe have watched our Sprouts videos for better learning. Thousands of teachers play them in their classrooms to start projects. Volunteers on YouTube have translated them to over 25 languages. Our mission is to promote learning by doing in classrooms around the world. If you are a great explainer and a passionate teacher and you want to help us develop outstanding content, contact us. To support our channel with a donation, visit patreon.com/sprouts.